Hello and welcome once again. Well, French judicial authorities have issued arrest warrants for ousted Syrian President Bashar al-Assad and 6 other top former officials over the bombardment of a rebel-held city in 2012 that killed 2 journalists, lawyers said Tuesday. Mary Colvin, 56, an American working for the Sunday Times of Britain, and French photographer Remy Ochlik, 28, were killed on February 22, 2012 by the explosion in the eastern city of Homs, which is being investigated by the French judiciary as a potential crime against humanity as well as a war crime. British photographer Paul Conroy, French reporter Edith Bouvier, and Syrian translator Wael Omar were wounded in the attack on the informal press center where they had been working. Assad escaped with his family to Russia after being ousted by Islamist rebels at the end of 2024, although his precise whereabouts have not been confirmed. Other than Assad, the warrants notably target his brother, Bashar al-Assad, who was the de facto head of the 4th Syrian Armored Division at the time, Intelligence Chief Ali Mamlouk, and then Army Chief of Staff Ali Ayub. Well, and joining us to discuss this is Marek Laskiewicz, an international affairs analyst from London. Glad to have you join us, Marek.
Hello.
All right. What's your take on this arrest warrant on Bashar al-Assad, the former Syrian leader Bashar al-Assad?
Well, it's a gesture, is it not? But he's safe and sound, so to speak, well beyond the reach of the law. And so this is just a formality, if you like. However, it is something.
Formality. Yeah, okay. I'm wondering, is it too late in the day? What even provoked this arrest? It's been quite some time now.
Yeah, I think it's part of just the general propaganda machines being churned out because, to be honest, it is late in the day. It's well past its sell-by date in the case of news. And this seems to be nothing more than a PR move just to blacken Russia, basically.
So you think that basically nothing is going to come out of this? Just
no,
for the
because
ops?
Unless the Russian regime falls, he's safe.
One was just wondering, how does this play out with the issue of Israel's killing of journalists? Is it a question of different laws for different folks?
Alas, so. The fact of the matter is that Israel gets away with actions which other nations would have been pilloried for, and quite possibly may well have to pay reparations at the very least. And the individuals concerned, nothing ever happens to them. And a good example there is the violence with settlers against the local Palestinians. Nothing happens to them either. Yes, the law is not equal, I'm afraid. And one law for one for the others.
Well, if anything comes out of this, what are they going to be tried? Is it in France? Or because the court is saying that this could well be crimes against humanity. So why is he going to be tried if it works out that yes, he gets in?
If there's a trial, then obviously France is a key place for it. The International Court of Justice might be another one. These are both possibilities, and I would assume that the latter would win out if possible, because it gives more of an international prestige and has more international impact than a local trial in France.
Again, this investigation clearly establishes that the attack on the informal press center was part of the regime's explicit intention to target foreign journalists in order to limit media coverage of crimes such as this. How does this speak to journalists being endangered species and what the world should really be doing in terms of areas where you have conflict to make sure that journalists are protected?
Well, To be honest, it does, of course, as we said a bit earlier. It is a symbolic gesture. It's important. It shows that journalists are being thought about. But to be honest, many nations around the world target journalists. Russia targets its own journalists. It would appear Israel's targeting Palestinian journalists, and other regimes which don't want journalists around target them. So they're not so much as endangered species because there are plenty of journalists. A better term would be that it's a very dangerous occupation in which can be cut short in a very unpleasant way at any moment. You should also include, please note, that prison, often with torture, is bad and arguably worse. So the situation is that journalists face many difficulties. Being unable to get the information or being unable to interview is the least of their worries. Survival in a somewhat pleasant condition is unquestionably must be at the back of their minds all the time.
Other than Bashar Assad himself, three others are involved. His brother, Ali Mahar, and then, of course, there's the Army Chief of Staff, Ali Ayub, and Ali Mamlouk, Syria's intelligence chief. Who knows where they are?
I assume they're all in Russia is the obvious place. To be quite honest, they've gone to ground quite deliberately, and no one wants to advertise their presence. And that would appear to be the route. It also has to be said that we're now talking of them as criminals. For many years, they ran the country. They were accepted, acknowledged, and now, of course, they're suddenly, out of the blue, told to the criminals. So there is a somewhat bizarre aspect to this. The time that we're announcing they were criminals is when they were running the country, because some of their actions when they were running them, not just against foreign journalists, but against their own people, were highly questionable, to say the least. But no one said a word. It was convenient for everyone, and so no one said anything. In a sense, all this shows is it's bad, woe to the losers. Saddam Hussein is perhaps a more extreme example of what can go wrong when you lose power.
Does this even at all hinder such leaders that go out of their way to do these sort of things? How does it rein them in? Does it do that at all?
I think what it really all shows is that there's a Chinese saying, he who rides a tiger can never come off. And therefore, when you're in power, you must never lose power. And for example, Putin knows that if he were ever to lose power, he'd likely to make it to the next day. And this is one reason why the war in the Russian-Ukraine will continue, why he continues with his ambitions, because he literally cannot stop. And any sort of punishment by calling the leaders criminals, to a certain extent, has a certain counterproductive effect.
So what it does then is to make those leaders dig in, because they know that if they lose power, then that means they could just be tried and going for it, like some other leaders have experienced.
Yes, please note that the aspect of the trial is just as bad as the actual execution. There's a certain humiliation for them. The only person I've ever seen triumph in that sense was Goering, who laughed and ran rings around his judges at Nuremberg. Most people, 1 minute in power, next minute on trial, it is a deeply unpleasant and humiliating experience, as bad as the execution. But to come back to your first point, yes, there is this counterproductive effect, and it makes the leaders dig in. Moreover, it implies that they can't lose their ambitions either. And there is even a certain worse aspect to this. It's well known that the worst moment for a government, a bad government, is when it starts to reform itself. So the implication is, if you're a totalitarian dictator, stay that way and keep trying for more, because anything else from that, apart from that, could see you hauled before the beak, so to speak, and facing a very unpleasant sentence.
And just like you said a while ago, France's highest court had already ruled in July that an arrest warrant for al-Assad was invalid because it was issued while he was in office.
Yeah, there's many legal games now, to be honest. These are just details. As you know, the law, there's appeals, counter appeals. It can go on for some time. On the whole, justice works. But as they say, the wheels of justice grind slowly, but they do grind, which is the English expression. And in that sense, yes, they will get past these obstacles. But ultimately, because of political reasons, he will never be properly brought to justice.
That's just the big elephant in the room. Because of the political reasons, he may never be brought into to pay for his crimes. Thank you so much. International Affairs Analyst there, Dr. Marek Laskiewicz from London. Thank you.